Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Deadly twin blasts rock Damascus as Salafi group targets security buildings. Emirati foreign minister slams Muslim Brotherhood amid crackdown on Islamists. And humanitarian crisis mounts as 100,000 Sudanese flee internal violence. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
The opposition local coordination committees said that over 100 people were killed today by government forces' fire. Half of them were in Damascus and Aleppo. The Syrian opposition had spoken of shelling that targeted the Damascus countryside, especially the Saida Zainab area, and of intensified shelling of several neighborhoods in Aleppo. As for Syrian State TV, it announced that Syrian forces stormed the neighborhood of Al-Khalidiyya in Homs, one of the most prominent opposition strongholds in the city.
Two suicide attacks rocked the Syrian capital. The target was a main branch of Air Force intelligence in Harasta, one of the rebel towns in the countryside of Damascus. From an undisclosed location, activists posted live images before, during, and after the two explosions that rang across the Syrian capital. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights confirmed that dozens were killed and injured, indicating that the fates of prisoners in the jail cells of the branch remain unknown.
جبهة النصرة الإسلامية التي يقال إنها ذات فكر سلفي جهادي.
In a statement it issued, the Al-Nusra Islamic Front, said to be of Salafist jihadi ideology, claimed responsibility for the two bloody explosions and confirmed that they came as revenge for those Muslims who have been oppressed and killed, according to the statement. This front has claimed responsibility in the past for a number of attacks, the last of which was in Sa'dallah al-Jabri Square in Aleppo. Areas in Homs province witnessed developments on the ground as Syrian regime forces wage a broad campaign to take control of opposition areas within the city of Homs and the nearby city of Qatar. Opposition activists confirmed that Syrian forces are attempting to storm the city from three directions, indicating that the clashes are intense and violent, and are concurrent with the shelling of the city. In Aleppo, Syria's second-largest city, the neighborhoods of Bustan al-Basha, al-Haidariya, and al-Sheikh Khudr, northeast of the city, have been under heavy shelling since the early morning. Sounds of violent clashes could also be heard there. Regime forces resumed their operations in several areas in the countrysides of Hama and Latakia.
A Ukrainian shipment destined for the Saudi army was diverted to terrorist mercenaries in Syria. It's clear new evidence of the Saudi support and financing of armed groups through money and weapons.
Arming, financing, and incitement. These are three actions performed by Saudi Arabia and Qatar to bring down the fortress of resistance, Syria. These two countries openly declared without apprehension or fear that they are financing and arming terrorist groups with the most modern types of weapons. Several news media reports which came out over the past few days spoke of the detention of mercenary terrorist groups, which are armed by Saudi Arabia and Qatar, without an implicit agreement from Washington. However, it appears that their approval has been given after the British BBC channel revealed in a broadcast that a shipment reached the province of Aleppo. According to its correspondent, the weapons shipment was destined for the Saudi army, but was diverted to armed terrorist groups. It was shipped by the Ukrainian Dastan company, which specializes in naval weapons and rocket-propelled grenades. Armed terrorist groups admitted to the BBC correspondent that they received assistance from Saudi Arabia and Qatar without revealing its nature.
The fighters didn't let up asking for external assistance for months. For the first time, there is proof that they are getting it. A crate of Ukrainian weapons was produced and shipped specifically for the Saudi army, but its contents and how it reached gunmen in Aleppo remain unknown. However, it suggests that in the Gulf countries, there is someone assisting the mercenaries.
This is not new to Saudi Arabia and Qatar, which have been seeking, since the beginning of the Syrian crisis, to use their weapons and clout to shake up the stability in Syria and spread chaos, ruin, and destruction by sending its mercenary Wahhabis and supplying them with all means to kill.
According to his statements, Emirati Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan called on countries in the region to cooperate in order to confront the Muslim Brotherhood group and prevent the group from plotting to undermine their governments.
With harsh words, Emirati Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan called on the region's nations to cooperate in order to confront the Muslim Brotherhood group and to prevent the group from plotting to undermine their governments, according to his statements. Al Nahyan accused the Muslim Brotherhood of not believing in nation-states and state sovereignty. He saw it as unsurprising that their international organization proceeds to weaken the country's prestige, sovereignty, and rules. The Emirati Foreign Minister added that the arrests in the Emirates of groups belonging to the Brotherhood fall in line with their fight against them and the obstruction of their plans. Sheikh Abdullah didn't show his position regarding the arrest of some 60 Islamists in the Emirates over the past month. He didn't comment on the legal procedures against them. The Muslim Brotherhood group regarded the Emirati Sheikh's fears as a preemptive attack with no evidence. A growing rift is causing problems for the Emirati government with the group, as the Brotherhood assures that it is not meddling in any country's affairs.
It appears that they tell lies, then believe them. The Muslim Brotherhood has never called for assaults on governments or their sovereignty, nor on the rules and regulations that apply in these countries.
The Muslim Brotherhood movement leader went further than that when he regarded the Emirates' campaigns as expressions of fear over the extension of the Arab revolutions.
What is happening in the Emirates is unjustified. It appears that the Arab Spring has alarmed those governments. They think that the Muslim Brotherhood is the one holding the keys of change within them. But the only one holding the keys of change is God. All praises to him.
Al-Nahyan's statements come after statements by Dubai's police chief, Dahi Halfan. He launched a campaign against the Muslim Brotherhood movement, accusing them of aiming to take power in Persian Gulf states. He also threatened to arrest preacher Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who is regarded as one of the most prominent spiritual leaders of the Brotherhood, due to what he said were offenses to the Emirates and their rulers. The Emirates had arrested some 60 people and accused them of belonging to the Muslim Brotherhood group, which is banned in the country, and of conspiring to overthrow the government. It also arrested a number of freedom of expression and human rights activists.
Relief organizations working in South Sudan say that more than 100,000 Sudanese are living under harsh conditions on the border between South Sudan and the north. The refugees fled to these areas as a result of the ongoing fighting between the Sudanese army and rebel movements in the areas of the Blue Nile and Nuba Mountains, which are adjacent to the state of South Sudan.
Within these dense forests, the fighting in the states of the Blue Nile and South Kordofan has led to the displacement of tens of thousands of Sudanese who found a safe haven in the lands of South Sudan. More than 100,000 refugees are housed in this camp in the southern state of Maban. They are living under harsh conditions and they lack basic life essentials.
We pretty much cut off the world.
We are cut off from the world. The only solution is air transport, and this is somewhat expensive. In addition, we are facing floods that make the roads impassable. This worries us regarding relief supply routes.
Children are the most affected by the suffering resulting from the war in these areas. Their families were forced to flee with them under harsh circumstances as a result of the spread of combat operations. However, despite the harsh circumstances that these refugees are going through, they seem keen to send their children to the classes available in this camp and hope to return to their homes one day.
During the first week, we received 400 students at the school. Now that number has reached 1,000. We hope that the number reaches 2,000 within a few weeks.
The fighting between the Sudanese army and the rebel movements in the areas of the Blue Nile and South Kordofan erupted in the middle of last year. It saw the secession of South Sudan from the north and the establishment of the Republic of South Sudan.
The United States and Israel are close to making a decision to mount a surgical strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. This according to international relations expert David Rothkopf in an article published today in the Foreign Policy magazine. Rothkopf is considered close to the Obama administration, and he cites sources in Washington saying that a joint U.S.-Israeli strike would target Iran's uranium enrichment facilities. According to Rothkopf, the attack would take only a couple of hours in the best-case scenario, but could last as long as 1 or 2 days, involving bombing raids with drone support, with the immediate goal of setting back Tehran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, Haaretz today reports that Iran has diverted much of its enriched uranium to scientific research. The new information is apparently what prompted Prime Minister Netanyahu's statement at the United Nations last month that Israel was extending its deadline for international action on the Iranian nuclear program until the spring of 2013. You could know sometime within the next 24 hours if the country is going to early elections. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is conducting a final round of meetings with coalition partners and could announce a decision shortly. Here with more is IBA's Ellie Walkerlander. Good evening, Ellie.
Good evening. Thank you, Yochanan. It appears to be only a matter of hours before Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu makes the final decision to go ahead with early elections. He met today with the leaders of United Torah Judaism, Deputy Health Minister Yaakov Litzman, and MK Moshe Gafni. Litzman said after the meeting that Netanyahu would prefer to pass the 2013 state budget rather than hold early elections. But sources close to Litzman say his party will not compromise whatsoever regarding child welfare payments, and so he recommended early elections. Over the past week, Netanyahu has met with several party leaders, including Interior Minister Eli Yishai from Shas, Science and Technology Minister Daniel Hershkowitz of the new NRP, Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman from Yisrael Beitenu, and Defense Minister Ehud Barak of the Independence Party. Following the meetings, most of the party leaders indicated that early elections would be more reasonable than to try to pass a budget with the current coalition. Coalition Chairman Zev Elkin says he sees early elections as inevitable because none of the coalition partners appear ready to compromise. Analysts say Netanyahu will make a declaration between now and Sunday's cabinet meeting, either on an agreement over the budget or the scheduling of new elections. Some are saying the announcement could come within the next 24 hours. Netanyahu intends on holding the elections sometime between the end of January and the middle of February. Yochanan?
All right, Ellie, thanks for that report. There was relative quiet in the south today as only a single rocket was fired this morning by Gaza-based terrorists at the Eshkol Regional Council. The projectile landed near the security fence. No injuries or damage reported. Yesterday, the terrorists fired some 30 rockets and mortar shells into Israel. The army responded by striking Hamas and Islamic Jihad positions in Gaza. Security remains high at Jewish religious sites in France today following the recent wave of anti-Semitic incidents. Diaspora communities celebrate an additional day of Simchat Torah, so the synagogues are active today. Blank shots were fired at a synagogue this past Saturday, and there was a grenade attack on a kosher grocery store last month. One suspect was killed in a shootout with police 3 days ago, and 11 others have been arrested on suspicion of belonging to a cell of radical Islamists responsible for the attacks. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said he was deeply saddened by the rise of anti-Semitism in France. Ban's comments came during talks with French President François Hollande in Paris. The two men also spoke about Syria, the stalled Middle East peace process, and the need for Israelis and Palestinians to resume negotiations.
Libya announced that it possesses important evidence that would incriminate Saif al-Islam Gaddafi in the accusations he faces for committing crimes against humanity during the revolution that ousted his father, Muammar Gaddafi, last year. During a hearing at the International Criminal Court, the Libyan lawyer at the court pushed for Saif al-Islam to be tried within Libya and not outside of it. He also opposed the International Court's right to remand him for trial. Saif al-Islam's lawyer said that his client would not receive a fair trial in Libya, where they could sentence him to death. But Libyan authorities promised a fair trial. With me from Tripoli is Libyan human rights and political activist Jamal Ahmed Al-Haji. Mr. Jamal, why is Libya failing to convince the court, or perhaps even the world, that Saif al-Islam will be able to get a fair trial, in your opinion?
Mr. Muhammad, Libya didn't fail. In fact, the world needs to take a closer look at what's happening in Libya. Libya is coming out of a very dangerous crisis. The case against Saif is a fair case, and it is the right of the Libyan people to try him. The International Criminal Court indicted him on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity. These crimes were committed in Libya, and the ICC acknowledges that. After the capture of Abdullah al-Sanusi, and from the numerous documents and information gathered from dozens of witnesses who served directly under Saif's command, there's enough evidence to try him. Saif was in charge of running the state. Hence, he was responsible for all the crimes committed in the country, including the crimes that took place in Benghazi during the revolution on February 17, 2006. Dozens of Libyans were killed, and dozens of others were injured in these incidents.
Today in Egypt, the administrative court is expected to release its verdict concerning the fate of the Constituent Assembly, which is in charge of drafting the Constitution. The verdict was postponed in last week's session in order to present documents and memorandums to the court. The decision expected today will end the 7-month-long controversy that has accompanied the formation of the Assembly. It is assumed that the court will rule on the nearly 23 cases that aim to dissolve the Constituent Assembly. The court is also looking into cases that aim to dissolve the Muslim Brotherhood. Human Rights Watch expressed concern over human rights violations in the Egyptian constitution, saying that plans for the new Egyptian constitution include articles that may pose a dangerous threat to freedoms. They noted that the current draft includes articles that fail to meet the legal standard. An example is Article 5, which does not prevent torture, and Article 36, which threatens the principle of equality between men and women. Joining us from Cairo is our correspondent, Tawfiq Ahmed. Tawfiq, what is expected from today's session? Will an actual court ruling be issued concerning the Constituent Assembly?
Yes, today more than 40 cases have been looked into. They call for the dissolution of the Constituent Assembly for different reasons. This evening, the judge will issue his verdict, which could be one of three things. The court could postpone the case until further notice. Or, secondly, he could decide when the ruling will be issued, which could take a week or even a month. Third, the ruling could be issued regardless. The different parties or claimants hope that the verdict will be issued today, as he expressed on Dubai TV. On the other hand, the Muslim Brotherhood hopes that the case will be extended until the current Constituent Assembly finishes drafting the Constitution, rendering the case worthless. Between the two, analysts and legal experts believe that the case will take a long time, given the political weight it enjoys. There will most likely be no decision issued today.
دكتور ياسر علي المتحدث باسم رئاسة الجمهورية أن النسب التي أعلنها
Dr. Yasser Ali, spokesman for the presidency, said that the benchmarks President Mohamed Morsi announced in his speech commemorating the victory of the October War regarding the 5 cases of traffic, garbage, security, fuel, and bread represent his achievements during this short period of time. He stressed that there is a long-term plan currently being implemented in order to uproot these problems. And despite government efforts to provide sources of energy for citizens at reasonable prices, prices, such as diesel fuel, gas, and propane tanks, the black market is greatly draining these efforts.
The black market is the magic phrase for most of the crises that the country is enduring, especially those that pertain to fuel and sources of energy. This is a reality that Dr. Mohamed Morsi did not overlook in his speech during a celebration marking the October 6th anniversary. He noted that with regard to the theft of diesel, gas and propane tanks, a large number of violations have been cited and the cases have been investigated. Citizens did not disagree with this statement. However, they made some assertions.
I find 90-grade gas easily available, though there's a crisis when it comes to 80-grade gas and diesel. But there's no problem with grades 90, 92 and up.
It's the same old problem, which is a gas and diesel shortage. It leads to long lines and crowded roads, and the prices go up.
Efforts to provide propane tanks at reasonable prices are in vain. In front of the warehouses, there are still lines of people waiting to receive propane tanks. And if they are available, their prices are high.
The black market still exists. Propane tanks are sold for £25. They're punished with 5 years in jail, but there's no fine. Whoever's found dealing propane tanks, they should be jailed for 15 years.
The tanks are available. The government is making them available. But sadly, we have a mafia of tank thugs. The police have to combat this mafia with force.
100 days have passed since Dr. Mohamed Morsi assumed office. Although some of his promises pertaining to the availability of fuel and energy sources have been fulfilled, citizens don't have enough to be satisfied. And demands to improve the government's performance still persist. Despite all of the work put into making sources of energy such as propane tanks, diesel and gasoline available, the black market is negating all of these efforts. This reality confirms that what we need is conscientiousness and a change in behaviour. Suzanne Mostafa, Now TV.
The U.S. is planning to sign a security agreement with the Afghan government, which would allow American forces to set up permanent bases in Afghanistan beyond 2014. But Afghans are strongly opposed to the presence of U.S. forces. They say the U.S. military's involvement in the country has only created more unrest. Faiz Khurshid tells us more.
Exhausted and desperate, every one of these Afghan men wants an end to the US-led conflict in their war-torn country. They are no longer supporting it. They want Afghan forces to take the lead. The presence of Americans has achieved nothing but more violence, they were telling us.
The presence of these foreign troops has brought more unrest in our country. They are themselves supporting the Taliban. Therefore, we want them to leave this country immediately.
We have to move towards self-sufficiency and defend our country ourselves. The foreign countries should not be allowed to lead our country.
Their faces turned red when I asked them about the establishment of U.S. military bases in Afghanistan beyond 2014. We found them totally anti-U.S. They all negatively responded to this plan. We won't let them stay here any longer, this man said.
We are not happy about the presence of those foreign troops. We hate them. And if they stay here, more innocent people will be killed in their operations.
But President Karzai has already confirmed that the U.S. wants to sign a security agreement with his government. And once it is inked, the U.S. military will set up their permanent bases in this country. Both sides are now in talks. But Karzai has not made his mind yet. He's not sure if it will help the country.
This agreement is about U.S. military bases, the number of U.S. troops beyond 2014. But the U.S. cannot influence this agreement through its media psychological war against our position.
At this stage, President Karzai is not trying to sell this deal to his people. He's still blaming the U.S. for committing big mistakes, like not chasing the militants in the Pakistani tribal areas. But his critical tones have usually changed overnight. Public opposition to U.S. military presence here has grown as this country still remains a dangerous place in that it's local civilians who are bearing the brunt of escalating violence. They have paid the highest price since this war began. 20,000 civilians are said to have been killed so far in this war. It's a huge number. Therefore, it's believed to be too difficult now for the U.S. to convince Afghans that its long-term involvement would change their lives. Faiz Khurshid, Press TV, Kabul.
2 bomb blasts killed at least 4 people in the southern Afghan province of Helmand. The dead include 3 civilians and a policeman. 2 other policemen were injured by the explosions that happened shortly apart in the city of Nad Ali. No group or person has claimed responsibility yet. Violence is on the rise across Afghanistan, some 11 years into the US-led invasion. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization says 868 million people around the world are going hungry. FAO says the overall figure has dropped from 20 years ago, but despite the fall, the number is still unacceptable. The food agency also says 1 in 8 people around the world are going hungry, warning that the fight against hunger is slowing down. According to the World Bank, food prices jumped by 10% in July, raising fears of a more severe impact on the planet's poorest.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows and more at linktv.org/mosaic. Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.